So, what is it about this story? So for many of us, we've grown up listening to stories about Christmas anyways, and some of the things that happened at Christmas, and sometimes we get it all muddled together with other stories about Christmas, and sometimes we can actually sort out what is really from the Bible, but there's something about this story that engages us. There's something about the story that is often filled with warmth and comfort. If you think about it, the colors of Christmas, not the green and the red, but if you think of the manger scene, it's full of, well, you're sort of getting a bit of a sense here. In my mind anyways, there's candles, or there's lanterns, or there's that nice orange glow. And the other colors in the stable will be, well, there's straw and there's wood, and even the color of many of the animals. It's that brown, golden, orange, red sort of colors. It's warm and inviting. And part of the other thing for me at Christmas is there's singing. We've been doing lots of it tonight. But even at the very first one, there's the angels singing. Somehow, this story for many of us connects us into our roots. It also, there's lots of times, including later today, where we're going to be able to eat together Christmas food. And I found it very interesting in the different places I've been, that I've been places where people give me a plate of Christmas food, and it's really wonderful food, but it doesn't remind me of Christmas because it's not what I grew up on. This thing of Christmas reminds us of our roots and the sorts of really good memories that we have, except that sometimes those memories are sort of fading and not sure how good they necessarily are. They've faded into the mists of history, and we somehow, many of us, have been able to hold on to these images of really positive things at Christmas. It's also a feel-good season. Think about it. We've got this image of a stable and a baby in a manger, and we're feeling really positive about this. And then we sing songs, not like one we've sung tonight, but there is a song that many of us have sung about the baby not crying. Okay, anyone who's had a baby? Baby not crying? What's wrong with the baby? I don't know, but we sing this song like it's this really peaceful scene, and that's not what probably things were like. The reality, in many ways, was likely a whole bunch different from the images, the nice, warm images that we have. I don't think the first Christmas was anywhere near as nice and as quaint as our Sunday school images, or the memories that we drag up, or the images we get from TV, or wherever we've got those images from. First of all, it was a stable. Now, I've been told, I'm a city boy, I'm not a farm guy, but I've been told by farmers that one of the nicest places to be, especially on Christmas Eve, is the barn. After you fed the animals, they're in peace. And they're relaxed, and their warmth is sort of heating the place, and there's even a smell that comes about as the animals are so comfortable and just at peace. And that makes, for a farmer, the same sort of feelings. Again, those aren't my statements, but they're of other folks that I trust, that this is actually what happens in a barn. But even when things go well, and the barn is a nice barn, and it's enclosed, and it's warm, and the animals are at peace, it's still a barn. And I can't imagine that there's many women here who would choose to have a baby in a barn. I'm just guessing, but it's my guess that this is not your first choice. And on top of that, Mary and Joseph had just been on a journey. They had just traveled about 150 kilometers, which is not a big deal for us today, but they were either walking or maybe riding on a donkey. And if you've ever taken a close look at a donkey, you'll recognize that it actually isn't very much like a horse. It's far wider than a horse and not nearly as comfortable, and it doesn't have the nice stride that a horse does. It tends to jerk your way along. So I'm not sure what is better or worse, the walking or the donkey riding, but nevertheless, Mary, who just gave birth in the stable, had just been on this journey for 150 kilometers, number of days on the journey. It wouldn't have been a particularly nice time. And the story that we're remembering tonight happened just before Mary and Joseph and Jesus had to flee to Egypt because of Herod, who was about to massacre all the young babies because, as we just heard in the story, the wise men didn't go back and finger the one, and so he decided to get rid of many. It wasn't a very nice time. It wasn't the warm, comfortable time that we keep trying to remember. The world was a very different place. There was no social safety net. Even though here in Canada we have a social safety net, it's got lots of holes in it, but at least there's something. There was nothing back then. There were no hospitals. There was nothing to help refugees, people who had to give birth in a stable. There wasn't social assistance. There wasn't any of those sort of helps. There wasn't the normal sort of due process of law. Herod, the ruler at the time, was a really nasty guy. He was very concerned about his own power, and anyone who threatened his power, he got. So he went through a number of wives because they were kind of threatening at various times, and he had them killed. And some of his children tried to take over his power, and he had them killed. And so it's not a surprise that he had a bunch of other people killed, including the babies that he thought might have risen up to try and threaten his power. He was not a nice guy. He was in power because the Romans, his bosses in Rome, liked what he was doing. There was no people trying to revolt in his area. He had total control. It was a peaceful area. Well, by some definitions of what peace meant. At that time, in that place, the land was filled with people who had figured out ways of surviving, who'd figured out ways to keep their heads low enough that they didn't attract any attention from the rulers, because that was not a good thing. People who'd figured out how to live and not be killed. People who had a hope and they had a dream of a better future. They had a hope and a dream, and they were calling out to God for help. And it's into this mess that God sent Jesus. God sent his son Jesus into this very complex mess because people at that time needed Jesus. But the reality is that the world has changed. In all sorts of ways, the world has changed. But in all sorts of ways, the world is not that much different. There are still people who find it not safe to live in the places where they've been living. Or they found it dangerous to live there even though they've kept living there. And some people still have to flee for their lives because it's not safe. So the people back then needed Jesus in the same way that we need Jesus. And there's all sorts of ways that we needed Jesus. We need to be able to see God in a new way. At that time in particular, the understanding of God was sort of held by the rulers. And people needed to realize that it wasn't just about the rulers holding on to this power, but their understanding of God was for everyone. We needed to be able to see God's actions and be able to understand those actions, that they can be a model for us in our lives. And that's one of the important parts of Jesus' life on earth, was being able to look at his life, how he acted, how he talked, who he interacted with, to be able to use him as a mentor for our own lives. People back then and people today needed to be changed. Changed so that they in turn could change the world around them. Changed so that we can be more like Jesus, able to follow God on our insides and on our outsides. We needed a new relationship with God. A relationship that involves forgiveness and involves a renewed ability to connect with God, to know God, to be able to relate with God, but also a renewed ability to be able to relate with the people who live around us, and even a new ability to connect with us ourselves, of which forgiveness is a huge part of it. So into all of that, God sent his Son, Jesus, into this mixed up, complex world, to mixed up, complex people like you and me, to change people. Not to force them to be different, but to change them one at a time. So that one at a time we come to get to know God in a new way, to be able to walk with God in a new way. And as we do that, we are also able to interact differently with the people around us, with the world around us, and to make a difference and to change the world. Not perfectly. We're people. We don't always get it right. But our call is to work and to connect with the world around us. It's in this process of connecting with the world around us that we, who are broken, can connect with the world around us that is broken, and we can allow God's light to shine in our lives and in the world around us. As I said earlier, we began Advent listening to the song by Leonard Cohen, and the last two lines of the chorus: there is a crack in everything, us, the world around us, but it's through that crack that God's light can get in. It's in the brokenness in the world that Jesus came and Jesus comes. And it's through us, through our brokenness and through our ability to reach out into the brokenness of the world, that God's light is able to shine. So go with God. And let God's light shine through you, shine into the world around you. And it will make a difference. Let's pray. Lord, as we follow you, as we look to you, fill our lives with your love, with your light, and allow us to be able to shine in the world around. Shine with the light, your light, with the light of Jesus. Help us walk with you. In Jesus' name, amen.